let's talk about the empirical rule for a minute. This rule is a way to approximate the percentage of people or observations that fall within certain numbers of standard deviations of the mean. And in order to use the empirical rule, the data must be symmetric and bell-shaped. Or another way of putting that is normally distributed. So how do we draw one of these? Well, here's our bell curve. Well, that's a terrible bell curve. Let me try that again. There's a bell curve. Just make it as even as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. And right smack in the middle is where our mean is. And so we'll put the mean right there, the symbol for it. Notice we're using the symbol for population mean. Now we have, and I'm going to use different colors to make these stand out. So what I have just drawn is one standard deviation of either side of the mean. So on the right, it is the mean plus sigma, and on the left, it is the mean minus sigma. Remember, sigma is the population standard deviation. Then we have another standard deviation on either side. So this on the right, the new line I drew, is the mean plus 2 times sigma. And on the other side, it is the mean minus 2 times sigma. And then finally, well, I don't like that color. Sorry. Give me just a minute. And if we go another standard deviation each direction, we have the mean plus 3 times the standard deviation and the mean minus 3 times the standard deviation. So each one of these little strips here comes with a percentage. So this piece is where 34% of our data lies. And on the other side of the mean, there's another 34% between the mean and one standard deviation above the mean. From one standard deviation above the mean to 2 standard deviations above the mean, that is 13.5%. And it's the same on the other side. And remember, that's because this curve is symmetric. So when we fold it in half down the middle line where the mean is, the two sides match up perfectly. Between the second and the third standard deviations is only 2.35% of the data. And finally, these last little bits, so the tails on either side are 0.15% of the data. And actually, I probably should have written that. Let's do it this way. So from 3 standard deviations all the way to the left, that amount is 0.15%. And the same thing on the other side. From 3 standard deviations all the way out is another 0.15%. So one thing that the empirical rule says is the amount of data from 1 standard deviation below to 1 standard deviation above is 68%. And we can see that because we just added up the two 34% strips. 2 standard deviations below to 2 standard deviations above, that is 95% of our data lies between those two values. And we can get that just by adding 13.5 plus 34 plus 34 plus 13.5. And the last one, from 3 standard deviations below to 3 standard deviations above the mean, is 99.7% of the data. And that leaves 0.3 to be divided evenly between the two tails. So let's practice how we can use this to estimate the percentage of observations that fall within certain categories. And we'll do that in the next video.